Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Give us a quick second here, and we are going to look to set this up on Facebook Live so those folks can see it as well. So just give us a hot second. And I think we should be.
Chris, it's Kit.
Yes. Okay.
So I'm on and can see and hear you.
All right, we are going live.
Great. Someone just chatted us too. It says, "I hear and see you in Zoom."
We're good to go, looks like. Okay, well, fantastic. Well, here we are. So thanks again, everybody, for joining today. Really excited about the content that we have for today, working virtually, communication, working with your staff. We have Kit Ulrich with us today, and I'll let her do her own bio, but just so you know, she's started a new initiative called Defend the Fort, which is all about aligning businesses and helping businesses in this time of need for us as a community. And so, Kit, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Nice to see everyone, and we hope this is helpful today. So my background, I moved to Fort Worth with my husband and 3 kids a year ago, and we lived in New York City for 14 years before that. When I was in New York, I was the chief product officer for Weight Watchers, so responsible for product, UX, and design for Weight Watchers International around the world. And then I moved to another public company called Shutterstock, and was the chief product officer there. Shutterstock is a 2-sided marketplace for stock or commercially licensable content. Then I went over and joined Firstmark Capital, which is one of the top VC funds in the US that invest in early stage tech startups. And then I started a firm called Core Ventures, which helps provide consulting and strategic services and investments in this area. So I mean, a little bit of background, both at Weight Watchers, I rolled out a much more work from home infrastructure, and then had it from the get-go at Shutterstock. That was a totally tech-driven organization.
Great. Well, thank you for that. So let's get started. So what are the basics? What do people need? How do they need to be thinking about? I know you have some slides set up to share with everybody. So let's just get rolling through it.
Perfect. I'm going to share my screen with you all. This would be a good demo that we're trying out Zoom at the same time. So I'm really using all the tools I'm about to tell everyone about on this call. Letting my slides load. Here we go. All right, so I guess a couple of the starters. I already gave you guys my background, both running tech and product teams, but then what I would say is at Firstmark Capital, we have a portfolio of about 60 different technology companies. So when I go through these best practices, they also come from having 60 different companies in our portfolio that are using them day in, day out. One of those companies is a company called Envision, and Envision is one of the largest completely distributed organizations, meaning they have 700 plus employees and no offices. So just give you some context. These are from talking to those folks. I'm going to start with the basics. This to me is the foundation. If you're setting up a work from home organization, you have to have some combination of these to get started. The first obvious point is Zoom or Google Hangouts. There are other video chat services. So to some extent, it doesn't matter which one that you use, but I'll just tell you that Zoom and Google are the top 2 across the people that I know. The second thing that you need is to really get onto an online file storage system. G Suite is a top one. There are other online file storages just to upload files, which are things like Box. But a lot of the tech companies I use do use Google Suite, maybe because it gives you access to obviously Google Drive, but also Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, all of these online cloud-based tools, which I'm going to show you why that's so powerful if you've never used them. The other big thing people use is Slack, and I'm going to show you that because that is probably one of the tools that at first maybe people feel is the most awkward or they can't get it to roll out, and it ends up being one of the most powerful. And then the last thing I'm going to cover, Google Chrome, just an FYI, tends to be the best browser for any of these tools, mainly because there are plugins that you can add to your browser that allow integration. So for example, if you're using a Google Calendar or an Outlook calendar, Zoom will integrate with it so that when you set up a meeting invite, it automatically creates a Zoom link for it and you don't have to do anything. And that's why Chrome is known as one of the best browsers. So I'm going to give you just the top 5 Zoom tips, but then we will please keep track of your questions. I'm happy to dive more. Just an FYI, like this is the bar that if you are in the Zoom, you can see this bar at the bottom of your screen. Take a look. It's maybe a little different today because we're doing a webinar format. But with Zoom, you can always join via internet like I did. But if you click this little caret next to the join audio, you can always dial in. And so it's a fantastic option for your teams because people can join with video, use internet audio. Also, if for some reason your Wi-Fi is failing, you can also click this caret and it will show you the number to dial from your phone. And so there's a lot of kind of fail safes with this. Or if you're driving in your car and your company is having a meeting you want to listen into, you can automatically do the dial-in number and listen from any place. So that's a key benefit of Zoom. The other thing that I feel like is the top tip, which maybe is obvious, but to make sure you know how to mute your invitees or not. Nothing's worse than dialing into a meeting when someone doesn't realize they are not on mute and you hear all these background noise. So learning where those functions are, which are under the Manage Participants icon, is key. And as a host, you can both mute individuals, you can mute everyone. You can lock it so that no one can unmute themselves. You can set all those controls if you're the host and manage participants. The other tip is almost all the companies that go work from home implement a video first policy. I know for some folks listening in, you might be doing this for the first time. Other companies maybe already have work from home capabilities. But what this means is that if you have video, you should be putting your video on. Everyone should have their video live. That means also just not being as concerned about being on video. It makes it much more intuitive and obviously feels like much more of a community when you are in video. And then the other tip, which I'm doing right now, is when you're having video meetings, to use this screen share functionality as much as possible. You know, Zoom is meant so that I can see the participants while I'm screen sharing. There's just much better collaboration. So those are some of the basic but important tips for Zoom. My other top simplest tip, if you can see it, is that in Zoom in the upper right hand corner, again, may not be in this one today because it's a webinar, not a just web meeting, is that there's this button called Gallery View. This is probably the most overlooked tool. You click on Gallery View and you will see little boxes of all the people on the call. And so your meeting will then look like this. And so you'll be able to see everyone, and it's just a much better way to run a meeting is for people to click on Gallery View and see each other all at the same time. All right, I'm gonna do a couple minutes on G Suite. I'm not sure who's used Google Suite. You know, these were a couple questions. This is an example of a doc that we created to have the questions for today. But my point with G Suite is that all of these online collaboration tools have this. They have the ability to comment in the doc, assign it to people to answer questions. If this doc, for example, Chris and I could have been in this document at the same time on our computers, live editing it. So Chris could have been typing in a question and I could be adding a bullet directly below. So when organizations move to G Suite or any suite of online collaboration tools, it means that your meetings take care of work real time. So instead of having a meeting and someone having action steps that they write on a piece of paper and then have to type up later, it's happening real time. Or instead of when you're looking at a document, taking notes of how you're going to change it, you're changing it real time with the person. So that's why this is the other kind of foundational tool that folks get up and running right away. The other one is Slack. This, by example, is the Defend the Fort Slack channel we set up. You can search for us under Slack, or you can even go on Twitter and just find Defend Fort Worth and get into Slack that way. Slack is basically enterprise grade chat and text. So, you know, Defend the Fort is allowing it to anyone in this area to join it. Typically, you say anyone with the URL or an email address for my company can get invited to my private company Slack channel, and so you can restrict it that way. The reason why it's so powerful is that most companies that start using this get a lot of conversations off of email and onto Slack, and it allows you to do things much more real time. So, I mean, this is just one screenshot of Slack, but you can have these different channels on the left here and a general tab channel, and you can set these up for whatever you need for your company. So for example, here we have a general channel, but we also have a channel for anyone that's in a manufacturing company or a distribution company here in Fort Worth, so that they can connect with others about how COVID's impacting them. So it lets you set up different channels for people to join and different interests, and it lets people post to anyone who's in that channel. And then, like other social capabilities, has direct message capabilities where I could, for example, just Slack a DM directly to Chris. And what I would say is my companies, my husband runs an oil and gas company. He has rolled this out to his field resources, and they've almost cut down their email by, I think, 80–90%, and everything happens on Slack, with the added benefit that if you share something, anyone in the company can see it and benefit from it. So that's Slack. It tends to be the one I hear the most fear about, because it's maybe the most foreign, but it's probably one of the most important tools. So beyond that foundation of having kind of those set of tools in place, you've got to have Google Cloud, right? Video capabilities, online file editing, hopefully, as well as Slack, ideally. This is what I call the scaffolding. So setting up a remote organization, this scaffolding are best practices that almost any technology company uses, but they're particularly important to anyone now moving to work from home. The first one, which you can Google or we can follow up on, is called setting OKRs for your company, which are objectives and key results. You can go set that up and look at tons of resources online about how to set these. But objectives and key results are the best way to measure your progress. I'm going to give you a quick primer in a second. And then the second scaffolding item is figuring out what's the right meeting cadence now that I have an entirely remote team. So I'm going to talk about this in a little bit more details. So OKRs, again, I'm giving you a one-page summary. So this is a very quick summary of OKRs. I, with my own teams and then with portfolio companies, have done full 5-day workshops on OKRs. So this does take time, but OKRs are basically setting up for your organization at the company level, and then ideally at each department level, the key objectives you want to deliver, usually within a year, and then also within a quarter. And each objective that you state, you support with 3 key results. And so the objectives are meant to be qualitative statements, and then the key results are meant to be actual numbers that you are going to measure that qualitative statement against. So whether you're progressing towards this goal. OKRs have swept all tech companies because they far exceed how typical companies do goal setting. Typical companies, for example, they have annual goals for employees that were usually tied to compensation, which, by the way, means that most people sandbag them. They usually were set annually, which means that they don't adapt, because what company ever does what they said they were going to do 12 months ago? Certainly not a fast-moving one. And they were usually hidden. So most annual goals are really usually between you and your manager, not seen across the organization. And so how do you know what you're being held accountable to versus your neighbor or the people you're working with? And so OKRs came out in the tech org as essentially the opposite. They are not tied to compensation. They're supposed to be ambitious, because your goals as a business should be ambitious. In fact, some OKR leaders say that you should only reach about 70% of what the OKR is you're setting. Or you should put stretch OKRs, and they should be shared with the entire organization. And that last point is one I will just elaborate on, because, in this time of moving to work from home, one of the greatest challenge is not the initial infrastructure. I know that's probably what we're facing in this exact week if you haven't set up the infrastructure. But once you get the infrastructure, people having the setup and the Zoom and the online capabilities, the next step is how do you manage your team? And to manage your team remotely, you need to know what the key company objectives are and whether those objectives are flowing through to each employee in an effective way. And OKRs are the answer to that. So that's a very quick primer on OKRs. The second key piece of setting up a work from home organization is your meeting cadence, which is likely going to feel similar but different in some important ways versus having an office. And so there's a couple things. This I pulled from a company called Wethos. Wethos is also a fully distributed company. And this is one example about how they set up their meetings. I'll just point out 2 things. What is very common is that you have a company all hands on Monday and a company all hands on Friday. Company all hands on Monday is to set what are we focused on this week, make any announcements. Friday typically is to talk about what you completed against what you said you were going to set. But the point being, you need more frequent company all hands communication when everyone is working at their own remote locations. The other really critical piece is what is in the middle here, which is a 15-minute stand-up. So stand-up is literally the name of the meeting that tech organizations use. It's called that because it's meant to be so short that everyone is supposed to be standing for it. And so actually, if I was running a stand-up, sometimes even with remote teams, I would ask everyone to stand because you don't want getting people comfortable and sitting around for this meeting. It's meant to be to the point, 30 seconds a person, no more. And when I'm training teams, I'm timing them and just reminding them. It happens every single day. And you basically go around the group and you answer 3 key questions. What did you do individually yesterday? What are you going to do today? And is there anything blocking you that you need the team to help you unblock? And it is truly meant to be 30 seconds. If you stick with it every day, this does happen really quickly. And you'll be amazed at how much you absorb through this quick meeting, what everyone in your team is doing. Now, one caveat to this, I'm not suggesting you have a stand-up with your entire organization. It does not work like that. It is usually a stand-up, depending how big your company is, it's within departments or teams. I usually recommend no more than 10 or 15 people. So depending on how your org structure is set up, this is meant to be happening within departments. And so in, for example, Shutterstock, we had a product and tech leadership stand-up that happened with all the VPs that were on my team. And then they would have separate stand-ups that were on the different teams that they were working on. So that is the stand-up. You'll see what happens when you move entirely remote is that you just need a different and more frequent cadency of communication. That's kind of shown in these daily stand-ups. And it's also shown by the use of Slack because you need to make people feel more connected. You don't have the ability to walk to someone's desk and tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm stuck on this, or I'm waiting for this. And so, for example, Slack becomes that quick chat message of being able to tap someone on the shoulder. There's also some really cool capabilities of like pop-up meetings. So for example, if you are in Slack and you are chatting with someone, you can type /Zoom. And if you have a Zoom account, it will automatically let you pop up a Zoom window to finish with that person. And again, that's it. Literally, if you haven't set that up, all you have to do in Slack is do /Zoom, and what's called the Slack bot, which helps you set up Slack, will come in and tell you how to get that whole thing set up. So that's the scaffolding, the basic scaffolding that I can share, which is, rethink your meeting cadence, set up a daily stand-up, and start to put OKRs in place so that you really know what everyone in your organization needs to focus on. My last kind of PSA is there is an online solution for almost everything. So these are just 2 examples. One is that I get a lot of folks who say, well, I deal with a lot of plans and diagrams. I mean, just as an example, Onshape is an in the cloud based business that disrupted AutoCAD. Envision, as I mentioned, is an amazing org that does design tools. They actually have this tool, which I put in here, which is called Envision Freehand. We can share a link after, but Envision Freehand is an online tool that acts like a virtual whiteboard. So if we were in a Zoom meeting, I could have shared my Envision Freehand with all of you. We could have all joined it, and we could have used it like an online whiteboard. So there are solutions to do everything you can think of, from brainstorming to architecture diagrams and everything. And I think part of the challenge we'll have is making sure we find the tools that you need for your specific business. And my last point on this, so I put this quote on here for 2 reasons. One is that this is from GitLab. GitLab is, I think, actually the largest fully distributed remote organization in the world. And we can post a link, I'm sure, through the chamber. They have posted some amazing resources of how to set up a work from home organization on their site. So if you search GitLab, work from home, COVID, you're going to find a really exhaustive summary of how to best work from home from their experience. But this quote is the most important one, which will likely settle in after you get the basics, the foundation, and the scaffolding in place. But is there a better way to work than to have a meeting in the first place? I think the number one thing that you see is that most people, if we're talking honestly, hate meetings. They tend to, in general, be a waste of time or take way too long, or you feel like you're spending your whole day in meetings. And so I think work from home is an opportunity to rethink that. Most tech companies that have more work from home capabilities have realized that a lot more materials need to be shared in advance and read in advance. And the meetings are just meant as a way to ask and answer key questions. A couple examples, many of the tech companies I know will share, whether it be a PowerPoint presentation or a doc in advance, and ask all their attendees to put their questions in the doc. Some companies go so far to say is, if you have not put a question in the doc, you're not invited to the meeting, which is to say that you have to have reviewed the doc, thought about it, know what you think is worth discussing in order to come to the meeting. So I'm just putting this up there so that you also have an opportunity to rethink what meetings are for, and potentially use this as an opportunity to make your business run more efficiently. And with that, Chris, I'm happy to answer any additional questions as well.
Great. Well, yeah, I appreciate that. And as I'm looking to see if we have any questions here, I do have a couple questions myself.
Great.
So, employees who are used to working in the office and coming into the office every day and now working remotely, working from home, how long does it take to make that adjustment?
I think it of course depends on the starting point, because there's two jumps. One, some people are comfortable with the technology, but now they're getting used to doing it entirely from home. Some people are brand new at the technology. I would give yourself 2 weeks. And what I would suggest to everyone is that you really throw yourself into the technology. You go in Zoom, you click around to see where everything is. Like, don't be fearful of it. Give it a shot. It's the same advice I have for Slack and Google Clouds. Just start using them, and say that you're going to try to use them every single day for 2 weeks, and it will start to feel more comfortable. The other thing I'd say is, we're in a new era right now with not only working from home, but working from home with, if you have children home from school. So, the other thing I'm saying is that, we typically recommend having, a clean, distraction-free background with ideally the cameras at your eye level. Yes, you've done a better job than I have. I'm actually in my bedroom because my 3, 5, and 6-month-year-old are down the hall. So I think what we also acknowledge is that we have to give everyone a little bit of a break, knowing that it's okay if your kid pops in during this point in time. Just be comfortable with that. Go on mute. We're all doing our best, because this is, work from home on steroids right now.
Great. So what about tips for managers? For them, for the first time managing their groups, are there some best practices that are out there with these tools, or just in general, that you can provide?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my top one is that for managers, get that daily stand-up going. It's going to feel uncomfortable for you, by the way, because if you've never done a stand-up and now you're telling your team, I'm going to run the meeting this way, I get that there's a moment of fear behind it. Give it a shot. Give everyone the guidelines. There's plenty of resources online too to make sure you feel that confidence to roll out a stand-up. But getting on a Zoom hangout just for 10 to 15 minutes with your whole team once a day to talk about those 3 questions will dramatically change how your team operates. And then, I also suggest that, especially this time, managers should be having one-on-ones with their direct reports at least once a week. And what I'm hearing is, with all the changes going on, people are even upping that. So there's probably even more one-on-one dynamics happening in these 2 weeks in particular, because there's a lot more of checking in on, honestly, how people are doing and coping and managing, in addition to what work they need to get done.
Great. Okay, so we do have a question here. What has been your experience using Microsoft Teams as it competes with Slack and Zoom and the other things? That's another tool there. What's been your experience with that?
I think so. Microsoft Teams, my very candid answer is that Microsoft used to be behind on these tools with Word and Excel that were not as cloud-based, that did not allow live collaboration. And so that is my answer for why a lot of tech teams got kind of used to Google more than Microsoft Teams. I think that they have come a long way. If I had to pick one for my company right now, I would be choosing the G Suite, but that's probably because I'm most comfortable with it. So I think either solution is a fine solution for your business, as long as you're getting them cloud-based and getting these communication tools going.
Great. Another question I had about just the new teams, working from their homes. Do you keep the same hours? Do you alter that? How does that look?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I'll give you the answer before COVID, and then I think we're figuring this out. The answer before COVID was that a lot of fully distributed teams, they do have company hours, and they try to set them for a block of time that's best across time zones. So for example, it would be something like 10 a.m. Eastern to, 5 p.m. Eastern, so that it was, starting at 7 a.m. on the West Coast, starting at 9 a.m. on the Central Time. So they blend the time zones. That's what's usually recommended. I think we're figuring it out with COVID. I know several companies that are trying to actually do early hour working times and late hour working times, knowing that people are at home dealing with kids. And so people are trying out blocks of time in the morning, 1 block in the morning, 1 block in the middle of the day, and 1 block in the evening. But I think we're gonna have to share insights, because I see downsides of that too, right? We can't have people working 24/7 just because their kids are at home during the day. They need downtime as well. But I'd say people are testing and trying different solutions, trying to make it easier on parents too, with kids being home from school right now.
Great. What are the top challenges that you see that you hear from folks as they're either going remote or just remote in general? Are there some top things that you're seeing that a lot of people are having the same challenges and how they're overcoming them?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we hear about is just, it's a very different rhythm when you're working from home. And I think in particular with COVID out there, meaning people are staying in their homes, period. Some of the best advice I can give is to try to keep your day as normal as possible, meaning even fully distributed teams before COVID came, the advice they'd give is obvious, but get up and shower and get fully dressed as if you were going into an office. And by fully dressed, one of the small but simple solutions was wear shoes. That sounds silly, but you just feel you don't feel like you're in the office if you're wearing bare feet or slippers. So, get dressed and wear shoes. It helps you set your work hours. The other tip from that is that it's very easy when you're home all the time for work to bleed into your downtime. And it just very quickly feel like you have no downtime. And it's even more pronounced when you're working from home virtually. And so for that, it's the same kind of idea. Get up, get dressed, go to the office in your shoes in front of your computer. But at whatever time you're stopping, your computer closed, you take those shoes off, kind of like, I think of it as Mr. Rogers, how he would take his sweater off and on when he walked into the house. Go put your sweater on when you're done with your work, so that you have a mental symbol to yourself that now is my downtime, because you're going to need that.
Great. I guess another, question, you talk about the meetings and, being prepared, what all, and then just brainstorming in general. I mean, what all do you think should be prepared ahead of time and submitted so people can think about it versus, live in-person discussion to have a more focused discussion like you were talking about before?
Yeah. So again, I think the biggest thing is the types of meetings that typically the companies that have gotten into this rhythm are what I was saying, which are the stand-ups, really quick, action-oriented meetings to get it done. Sign off on materials. Many organizations that haven't gotten comfortable, it's very common that someone, for example, might be preparing a document or a PowerPoint, and then the meeting is them going slide by slide. If you find yourself doing that, that should be a sign to you to recheck on it, because if you are just presenting someone and they've never seen the information before, that usually is a waste of time. Because having people pre-read it and then get your talk track, which can usually go faster, has been shown to be more effective. It's also shown that people with different personalities types, if you've ever explored Myers-Briggs personality types, some people actually are better sitting on the information overnight, or an introvert needs time to think about it. And so the best methods that let all types of personalities respond are ones where you can absorb the information, comment in the doc live, and then you're more having like a confirmation sign-off meeting than you are one sharing information. So those are the top ones. The other type of meeting that a lot of companies I know do that works very well is it's a Friday all hands, where depending on your business, each team goes around the horn and quickly says, in the tech world, it would be what they're shipping, what code or product change are they shipping or getting out there. But it applies to almost any business. Like, what was the thing that they got done that they're proud about? And it lets you kind of share that across an organization and celebrate those moments, which, again, a hard thing is when everyone's working from their houses, you get less of that celebratory communal atmosphere. And so this can help with that if you set that Friday meeting up.
Great. So we had another question come in here, and I think that's a really good question. So obviously, in any work environment, you have generations, right? You have the boomers, you have the millennials, and some groups maybe latch on to the technology faster than others. So what's your what's your advice on, getting some of those folks who haven't been exposed to this technology, up to speed faster?
I mean, my biggest advice is start with one tool and really handhold them through one tool so they get comfortable with it. So, for my organization, I would start with Zoom because it's the one that you're going to most need. Like, you need to start talking to other people. And so I would, what I also think about is that I'll give you one example for Zoom. There are easier ways to get people in a Zoom hangout, and there are harder ways. So for example, even from the Zoom right now, I can click, and I'm more comfortable with it, but I know how to click under more, see the button invite, and I can get a link that would drop people directly into this Zoom meeting. So like emailing boomer generation, here's the Zoom meeting, here's just the link, just click on the link and that's it, is going to be a lot better than honestly even going into the calendar invite and having to navigate. Zoom usually populates a bunch of information with the link and the dial-in numbers and all these other components. So, I just recommend starting simple and getting people comfortable with getting in the Zoom. It's kind of like how FaceTime has become very easy for people that are a little bit older, because not Facebook, FaceTime. I mean, FaceTime on your Apple phone. The reason that FaceTime takes off is because it is stupid simple. So if you're running an organization and have some folks who are less comfortable, make it stupid simple to get into a Zoom meeting by just, one link or simple tools like that. To be honest, like a tool like Slack, as much as I am very pro Slack, it takes more time. Slack tends to be one of these things that's scarier for people, or they feel like they don't know if they're doing it right. All Slack is just read it in the channel, and if you see something or have input, write a comment. But that one it's a little bit higher up on the fear curve than starting with Zoom.
Great. Great. Well, that's all the questions we had. Are we missing anything? Have we not covered a topic that you think is important?
I mean, I think we covered the biggest pieces about the work from home. The only other one, which is I will just emphasize, is I would go read about OKRs, because OKRs, I mean, maybe we do another session, but OKRs are a topic of their own. And again, like this week for everyone is likely just setting up that foundation of, do you have the right tools? And then, setting up these daily stand-ups and meetings at Monday and Friday so your team can get together. The next step is not only just how to make sure my business is running, period, but how do I run my business well? And I think that's going to be the next phase we're all going to have to plan for, because unfortunately, I'm not sure this is going to be short-lived, and we're going to have to adapt a little bit for a period of time. And that's what OKRs do, is make sure you're actually delivering the business outcomes you need, not just setting up work from home.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through all of this. A lot of great information. I learned a lot, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers learned a lot as well. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, and best of luck to everyone. Stay safe.
Absolutely. And to the members and the folks who have tuned in, more to come. We're working on what our slate of topics are going to be next week. And so if you have any ideas, have any thoughts, please feel free to send those over as we try to provide, additional value for you and get you some additional resources and information through this difficult time. So thank you very much. Appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you soon.